I must go punch that baby.
Welcome to Media Spectrum, where stories still matter. I'm your host Daniel, and today we are talking about Poor Things. So a few weeks ago, I reviewed The Bride, and I was unfortunately not a fan of that movie. I wanted to like it, but it just had way too many issues for me. But when I was looking at what other people had seen about it, one of the most frequent bits of feedback I saw was that, oh, this is just a shadow of Poor Things. This movie wish it could be Poor Things. Blah, blah, blah. Just so many comparisons to Poor Things that painted Poor Things in a better light. And I'd heard about Poor Things when it came out a few years ago. It was a movie I almost saw a few times, but for whatever reason didn't. So I finally got around to seeing it now. And oh boy, this was this was an interesting watch to say the least. So going into it, I didn't know that much. I knew this was kind of another take on a female Frankenstein sort of situation. I knew it starred Emma Stone. I knew a few of the other actors in it, like Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo. I knew it was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, I hope I'm saying his name right, who had done some interesting movies I'd seen before, like The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer. Movies I honestly have never revisited, I've never really felt compelled to. I would dare say he's made movies so far that I appreciate a little more than I enjoy. His movies are very polished, very professional, clearly very well directed. They're very strange. And sometimes I really vibe with very strange, sometimes I don't. It just depends. I will say, out of all the movies he's made, this is the one I feel the most inclined to want to rewatch, so that's definitely a good sign. And I know that he has been working with Emma Stone quite frequently. I think this is the second time they work together, and they've done 4 movies now. So that's clearly a newer collaboration that's been going on. And I'm pretty sure that Emma Stone won an Oscar for this. I also knew that this was kind of a female empowerment coming of age movie. And I'd heard there was a fair amount of nudity and sexuality in it. I was not prepared, though, boys and girls. Just know, if you're going into this, I've seen Skinamax movies that were more tame than this. There are some just prolonged montages, particularly between Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo, where, if they weren't actually fucking, they may as well have been. My goodness. Although, one thing I want to shout out right now is the fact that Emma Stone was actually a producer on this film, as well as the lead actress. So she had a lot more say in these more prolonged, intimate scenes than most actresses do. I think that's important to bear in mind. So this is a movie that I can see people loving, I can see people hating. I'm gonna start focusing on some of the positives about it. First off, just visually, it is so unique and interesting to look at. There are more fisheye lens shots in the first 5 minutes of this movie than I think I've ever seen in any film, period. The way this movie uses black and white for some sequences only to shift to color, what that kind of represents in the journey of Bella, our main character played by Emma Stone, is all very interesting. It's a real child book come to life feel to it. The sets, the backgrounds, the colorings, the costuming is so ornate, it's so intricate, it is so fascinating to look at, where you could easily have a few drinks or grab a few edibles and just turn your mind off and just enjoy the visual feast. It is a fascinating movie to look at. I also found a lot of it to be pretty funny. Mark Ruffalo especially is kind of hysterical as this deranged fuckboy, which is just such a weird, against his normal type role, but he's excellent in it. Especially after a decade of him mostly being associated with Marvel, it's nice to see him do some real acting again. Willem Dafoe is really, really interesting as this doctor character, who I initially thought the setup was that he was Frankenstein's original monster, but who had somehow gone on to be a scientist. That's not the case. It's actually a little more dark and messed up than that. Instead, his story is that his dad was a scientist who did all these experiments on him as a child growing up to kind of test the limits of the human body and see what would happen. And so now, as a grown adult, he looks monstrous. He's been literally taken apart and put back together again. Hence me thinking he was supposed to be Frankenstein's monster, but that's not the case. He's not even Frankenstein. None of this is literally Frankenstein. It's a parallel, but they're all different names. And his character in particular is called Dr. Godwin Baxter, who people often call God for short, which, real subtle, the creator's called God, but it works. It works. Now, what makes this movie so controversial and so kind of weird and strange to me, and this is going to get into a little bit of a soft spoiler. I don't know if the trailer's revealed this fact or not, but I think it's good to know what you're getting into with this. It's not simply that Bella is a dead woman who's been brought back to life. Bella was a pregnant dead woman. And what Dr. Godwin does is he takes the baby's brain and puts it into Bella's body. So we have this woman who has the body of a fully grown woman, but the brain of a literal infant. Now, they say that her brain is developing more rapidly than most, and that definitely poses some interesting questions. But when we meet her at the beginning, she's effectively a toddler. She speaks like a toddler. She's still, going to the restroom in inappropriate places and things like that. And it's such a fascinating setup for kind of a coming-of-age type story. The thing is, immediately after we learn that she is effectively a toddler in a grown body, like immediately after we learn that, she starts playing with herself.
Mrs. Prim, Bella discover happy when she want. You are sour-faced, but I fix you. Close eyes. Oh, no! Just wait. It takes a moment.
She grabbed my hairy business.
And yeah, this gets very weird and very uncomfortable. And I completely understand why it really turns people off. Talking about sexuality for people under the age of 18 at all is always kind of taboo. At the same time, if we're all honest with ourselves, most of us have those kind of feelings developing well before we turn 18. Some of us bloom earlier, some later. As effectively a 3 or 4 year old toddler, that is pretty damn early. At the same time, these things do happen sometimes in real life. Not to get way overly personal here, I myself was 5 years old in 1997 when they re-released the Star Wars films, or George Lucas's special edition of it, in theaters. Which means that I, as a 5-year-old boy, saw Princess Leia in the gold bikini on the big screen. And yeah, that was definitely a life-changing moment, that's for sure. Point being, these things do happen. Some people do develop appetites and interests at very early ages. And so I don't think it's horrible to depict that idea, but the way that it's handled here is so unsubtle and kind of in your face that I could see it being kind of off-putting. And I have seen some reviewers who were just very, very off-put by it, who felt like there was something PDF-file about this movie. And I don't think that's what the intention is, but I get it. It is a big risk they took here. I will say, though, this leads to one of the most darkly funny aspects of the movie. I already talked about Mark Ruffalo and loving his performance, but one of the funniest things about his character and his arc is that he is infatuated with Bella when she's effectively a toddler. And as she kind of quickly matures and grows up and gains her own autonomy, he is just beguiled and cannot understand her, and just crashes out as he cannot control this woman as she becomes more and more of an actual woman. There's a lot we could say here about infantilization and how certain men really want their women to be rather childlike and things like that. But the way that Mark Ruffalo's character handles that is really clever. This movie has a fair amount of kind of gross body stuff as far as surgeries and stuff goes, which again for a Frankenstein movie makes sense. But it's not really that violent or gory, but just know that you are going to be seeing some pretty graphic medical type gore at a few points in this film for sure. The thing that's just kind of strange to me about this is that this is effectively a female empowerment coming of age story, but it's based on a book that was written by a man, directed by a man. And I'm not saying as a male storyteller myself that we cannot tell stories about women or have female characters in it, but this is so female centric that I just do kind of question it. It just feels a little strange. And I feel like there are things that would probably be a bit different if this was written or directed by a woman. For example, so much about this is about, a child in a female body coming of age and addressing that in all kinds of ways. And yet it does feel like a weird oversight to me that they never address her period. Like, think about it. You have a 4 or 5-year-old in a grown woman's body, and that time of the month comes and she starts bleeding. Wouldn't you expect her to kind of freak out about that? I don't want to focus on it too much. It's a weird, uncomfortable thing to think about, but I'm just saying, if you're going to commit to this premise, that seems like something that should have been addressed, and I feel like if you had a female creator behind here, it maybe it would have. Just seems like kind of a weird oversight to me. And then the last controversial aspect, again, spoiler, is that at some point in this movie, Bella, she's betrothed to a guy and finds a guy who she thinks will be a good husband, but she knows she wants to go out and have some adventures. And so that's why she goes off with Mark Ruffalo's character, to have these kind of wild finding herself experiences, both sexually, but also discovering the world around her in general. And in the midst of that, they run out of money, and so she starts working as a adult worker at a brothel in Paris. And again, this is something I don't even feel like it's really my thing to comment on as a guy. I know there are many different sects of feminism, some of which see sex work as a inherently empowering thing, some of them see that as an inherently depowering thing. I am a little skeptical of the idea of going and working in a brothel being a positive, empowering thing in someone's life. Like, it could be under some circumstances, I guess, but there's a lot of weird, dark stuff that can happen in that, and it doesn't necessarily shy away from that. She definitely has some unpleasant and strange experiences with some of the different men who come in there. But yeah, again, I'm glad that Emma Stone was a producer on this, because she clearly had a lot of say in how all of that content was handled, and she clearly approved of it and was good with it. So it's not like she was being forced to do these scenes. It just does leave kind of a weird, muddled message at times about her growth and what she's learning and how this character feels about sexuality in general. So anyway, this is a movie that I certainly didn't love, but I don't hate. There's definitely good things about it. I feel like it's a movie I might appreciate more on a second watch when I come into it with a better understanding of what I'm getting into. Visually, again, it is absolutely fantastic to look at. And I do have to give a huge shout out to the performances themselves. Emma Stone, in particular, deserves all the credit she got for this movie. This was a very brave role for her to do, not just because of the nudity, but the general physicality, the way that she has to act literally like a toddler, and the way she does that with how she moves, the way she holds her head, the way she kind of shuffles instead of a regular walk, and to see that gradually change as she progresses. It is an incredibly detailed, nuanced performance that, again, like the movie itself, I think I will appreciate more on a second watch. And she absolutely deserves all the credit in the role for just throwing herself into this role with reckless abandon. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was empowering for women? Do you think it was kind of problematic? Did you think it was funny? Did you think it was off-putting? Really curious to hear people's opinions on this film. Remember that a like and subscribe really helps this small channel grow. And I'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay sane, stay human.